Welcome to Madlik. My name is Jeffrey Stern, and at Madlik we light a spark or shed some light on a Jewish text or tradition. We host a clubhouse every Friday at 4 Eastern Time, and this week, along with Rabbi Adam Mintz and special guest Rabbi Hirsch Chin, we use the Biblical Nazarite as an opportunity to explore rabbinic and current Jewish perspectives on addition, sobriety, and joyful living. Hirsch Chin was my roommate at Torah Vodaas and a close disciple of famed and recently deceased Dr. Abraham J. Tursky, so you won't want to miss this one. So put away your Chardonnay and join us as we explore Biblical Nazarite, lessons in addiction, sobriety, and joyful living.
There might be. They should know they can get recovery.
Well,
how many years did you have the shtibel going?
The shtibel, I think it was about 8 years.
Wow.
8 years is a small shtibel. It was the place that people loved, and people were brokenhearted when it closed, but we didn't have a minyan. Because it was the kind of place people loved to come when they wanted an injection of davening. So they, when they went to something special, they would come. You can't have a shtibel that, I need 10 people on a regular basis. The fact that you come every other month doesn't help me.
That was the problem. You just couldn't keep a group.
Well, I hate to interrupt, and I do recognize that this is a Jewish clubhouse, but nonetheless, we do start on time because time is of the essence. So let me say by way of introduction that one of the things that I love about studying Torah is that both personally, but also in a much larger sense, it always takes me back to my youth. Number one, I studied Torah in a very profound way when I was young. But when you study Torah, you are talking to generations of family, of forebears, of spiritual followers who have read the same sacred texts. And so in a sense, it really is eternal, and it really is a reunion every time you look at a text that you looked at when you were younger, and you look at a text that was studied by prior generations. So that is my introduction to a very special episode of Madlik today, because I have reached out and contacted my boyhood friend. I called him Heshi, and he called me Shloimi. And we were roommates in Torah Vodaas. And the reason I reached out with him, and I don't need a reason, any excuse is better than none, and we do talk from time to time, is that in this week's Parsha, which is Naseh, it talks about the laws of the Nazarene. And you will see in a second that a Nazarite is one who needs to, or decides, I should say, to abstain from wine. And Heshi is going to share with us in a few seconds his journey, because he is a chassid, and he was very influenced by one of the world class scholars, doctors, psychologists involved with sobriety, with rehab, with recovery, and he passed away recently from COVID, and his name was Rabbi Abraham J. Tursky, otherwise known as Avraham Yoshua Tursky. Came from an illustrious Hasidic factory. I don't know what the Kool-Aid was like in that family, because his brother, also deeply recognizable Chassid, was the head of the law school at Hofstra. So this family produced two scholars who excelled in the secular world. But in any way, that serves as a question to Heshi by way of introduction. When the New York Times wrote the obituary of Rabbi Dr. Abraham Tursky, it says that he was a great rabbi from a great Hasidic dynasty, yet he also was a psychiatrist and a respected authority on addiction who was drawn to the 12-step approach central to Alcoholics Anonymous, a program whose origins are Christian. So here is a Hasidic Jew who, number one, was attracted, compelled to offer service and to get expertise in this world of recovery and sobriety. and two, saw the fact that other spiritual leaders had combined spirituality, spiritual texts with this journey. So Hesh, if you could introduce yourself and maybe give us an insight into how you and maybe Abraham Twersky got into this journey and what brought you to here.
Thank you, Shlomi. Thank you. Thank you. It's so great to be able to share a few moments with you. So my name is Hirsch Chen, or Shlomo calls me Heshi, but I live in Silver Spring, Maryland. Dr. Twersky, as he was known to us growing up, was Uncle Shia. Not a blood uncle, but our families, almost all my childhood, there are no memories, no stages in my life that did not include him and his family. His children were like my siblings, and he guided me through a lot of my life. I was a rabbi in Columbus, Ohio, minding my own business, never really having met an alcoholic or an addict, at least not that I knew of. And Uncle Shia calls me up, and he said in his inimitable voice, which was a little slightly nasally, we say Hershey Bar, which is what he called me since I was in first grade. That never stopped. Hershey Bar, you're a rabbi in this community, you got to know about addiction. And I answered what I usually answered him was, whatever you say. You tell me where, when, you tell me how high to jump, and I'm there. And so he introduced me to the world of recovery. He had me come to a retreat, an organization called JACS, J-A-C-S, Jewish Alcoholics, Chemically Dependent Person and Significant Others. And I went not having read any of the material that he sent me because I was an arrogant rabbi, and rabbis know stuff. And besides, he was going to be there, so I was just going to follow him around. And he wore a long coat with long coattails, so I was going to follow him around. I get there, and I meet a room full of recovering addicts, Jewish addicts, from ultra-Orthodox Hasidic to totally secular Jews who were there because they shared they shared addiction, they shared alcoholism, they shared a search for recovery. And to top it off, he didn't show up. So I was really like thrown to the wolves, and it was an amazing experience. What I learned and what drew Dr. Twersky into recovery. He was the medical director at St. Francis Hospital, it's a Catholic hospital in Pittsburgh, and he was running into patients at the psychiatric hospital. They were not dealing with alcoholics; they were dealing with mental illness. And he came across people who were getting better and had nothing to do with the medicine and nothing to do with their medical care. And he stumbled into this recovery process, and he saw destroyed people build themselves up like a phoenix from the ashes, recreate a life that did not ignore the past, did not deny the past, but based on that, through that, with their experiences, were able to rebuild a life and recreate themselves anew. And that was fascinating. Because although in religion we like to say that happens, and sometimes it might even happen, but it doesn't usually happen. And here you had people without religion that were becoming creative, constructive, productive human beings. And that was fascinating. One of the things that we learned early on in recovery is the difference between religion and spirituality. Because religion is very formal. There's my religion, your religion, that religion. And they say religion is for people trying to get into heaven. Spirituality is for people trying to stay out of hell. And that's something that as human beings that we share. There's certainly universal truths, universal foundations that help people in recovery if they're willing to go through the steps. And it's not easy, but it is simple, as we see.
Heshi.
Keep it simple. Yes.
So that is fascinating. I want to pull us into what made me think of you, and obviously the Numbers 6, chapter 6 talks about the Nazarene, and it says, "He shall abstain from wine and any other intoxicant. He shall not drink vinegar or wine or any other intoxicant. Neither shall he drink anything of which are made of grapes throughout his term as a Nazarite." And there's a little bit of a trigger in the text, because under a certain circumstance, when his Nazarite is interrupted because he becomes defiled, he has to bring a sacrifice. And the sacrifice that the Bible tells him to bring is a sacrifice for a sin, which raises the question, what is his sin? So Rashi, another one of my friends that I always get reunited with every week, says, quoting the Talmud, that his sin was that he abstained from something that was permitted, that God made this amazing creative world for us. There are enough things that as a religious Jew you can't eat. If God says you can eat or drink wine, you should be able to do it, and therefore he has to ask forgiveness for his abstinence. On the other hand, there are other commentaries like Nachmanides who says, no, it's because he interrupted his being a Nazarite, where he was striving to be closer to God because of this impurity, and now he has to ask forgiveness before he continues on his journey. So there's a certain level of ambivalence in the text, in maybe our religion, about what abstinence is, what rehab or recovery is. And I'd love to open this up both to you and to Adam to what, both whether it's Jews or Judaism, how it looks upon and how we're evolving in the way we look upon those who need to abstain or those who desire to abstain.
So thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you, Hirsch. I have a question, Hirsch, in your story that you told about Dr. Twersky. And, maybe this is a mystery that there is no answer to. But what was Dr. Twersky's secret? Why was he so successful in turning people around in a way that other psychiatrists, rabbis are not able to do it? What power did he have?
I can't say for sure, because only he could answer that question for sure. But by spending a life with him, I would say, because I saw him up front, close up so much, that one of the things that was phenomenal and maybe unique to Dr. Twersky was that he broke all boundaries. He broke any preconceived expectation. Because if you were that very orthodox person and you looked at him as a Hasidic Rebbe, but here's this world-class psychiatrist speaking at conferences all over the world, and if you came to him as the psychiatrist, here he was as the Hasidic Rebbe. So no matter what you expected, he was not going to be what you expected, and that allowed people for themselves to put aside their preconceived ideas about everything, including recovery, including addiction, and they're willing to listen to him. Because that one thing for sure, he wasn't going to give you the same old. Because that's almost by looking at him, you knew you weren't going to get that. And I think that's what made him so. For certain people, you expect something. With him, you never knew what to expect. And that kept things very fresh, and people wanted to hear what he had to say. It wasn't going to be what they've heard all the time growing up from the doctors or from the rabbis.
So what you're really suggesting, and I think, Jeffrey, this is fascinating, there's something to be said about the unexpected, especially when you're dealing with recovery. You don't want to hear the same. I've heard that already. I want to do something that's different. I want to hear from somebody who tells me something that I never heard before. That's a very interesting, I think, psychological and religious approach. And, you wonder about, you just wonder from the Torah, when they talk about the Nazir, You wonder also about the whole idea that there should be somebody who is struggling with addiction, struggling with wine, and the Torah itself is not entirely clear what his sin is.
And Adam, even the fact that the Torah only talks about the sin offering when he messes up. If he does, it doesn't mention the same sacrifice if he follows through. If the whole Nazarite period goes through, it doesn't talk about it.
They're very good. He only is a Nazarite at the end. That's correct. The Torah only focuses on the end. I love that.
One of the we're talking about the Nazarite. One of the things that Dr. Tversky mentioned on this topic of the Nazarite, he looked at the Haftorah. At the end of the reading is the story of Shimshon. Shimshon was probably the most famous Nazarite of the Bible.
Samson.
Right. Thank you. He's the most famous Nazarite. And when his mother gets the call, if you will, when the angel appeared to his mother and says, "You're going to have a child who shall be a Nazarite, and he can do this, he can," all these specifics. What you find there is that she was told she could know, she had to behave in that fashion. And Dr. Tversky writes, he said that's one of the important lessons in raising a family. If you want your children to behave in a certain behavior, you need to model that behavior. If she wanted her son to live the life of a Nazarite, even though it came from the divine, but if he was going to do that, then she needed to model the behavior. I just thought it was a different kind of insight into the Nazarite. But going back, Jeffrey, to your question about the sin offering, sort of the ambivalence about this idea. Is it a holy thing? Is it not a holy thing? Is it? We find in the Talmud, on a similar kind of ambivalence. But one of the things I think that is so special, a special lesson of the Nazarite, and you find it in a few places, is that Torah says this is the way life is supposed to be. This way, God created a world, and you should have this, and the other. In fact, there is an oft-quoted saying from Samson Raphael Hirsch, a German rabbi from the 19th century. He said that when we stand before the pearly gates, each person stands in judgment. God's going to say, "Hey, did you see my Alps? Did you enjoy them? Aren't they gorgeous?" The idea being that God created a wonderful world that we are supposed to experience. So that being said, so we're supposed to experience, and wine is part of the world that we are permitted to experience, and we should, when it is okay and safe. There are a lot of things that, generally speaking, they're beautiful and wonderful. If they're dysfunctional, if they're dangerous, the Torah provides the permission to don't do it. But I'm supposed to. No, you're not. Generally, yes. As I was thinking about this topic, Judaism believes in marriage. The Torah says when it doesn't work, there's a divorce process. But I can't get divorced. Marriage is biblical. Yes, you can. When it becomes dysfunctional, there's a get. Wine is permissible. We say a bracha. We sanctify the Sabbath and holidays on wine. That's true if you can drink it. If not, don't. And there are many, many examples of if there's a problem, if it creates a problem, then don't. The Torah gives us permission. No guilt. No guilt. Don't do it.
I think what you're saying is kind of amazing, because what you're saying is, if I understand you correctly, is that by creating the category of the Nazarene, the one who abstains, the Torah is creating an acceptable pathway. It's not one that everyone has to take, but some are drawn, some are in need, and that struggle, like Nachmanides, who said that the reason you give a sin offering is because you've come off of your journey, that it's absolutely a holier journey that needs to be loved and celebrated. And so you can live with both. You can say that the world was given to us so that we can enjoy everything. But for those of us who have a pathway where we have to abstain, that pathway is part of that celebration too. I think that's kind of interesting here, and that the Torah gives us this alternative lifestyle, so to speak, to enjoy the world with.
That's such an interesting idea, Jeffrey, that's also a celebration. The ability to abstain is itself a celebration.
As a matter of fact, the Talmud in the tractate Nazir has an interesting statement from the.
Looks like Hirsch is getting a phone.
Generally, he avoided offerings to participate in sacrifices of the sin offering. He said he came across someone who had cut his hair as his Nazarite, and he asked him, like, why did you do it? He had long, beautiful hair, and he explained that he got so wrapped up. This young man explained that he was so wrapped up in his looks, and he realized it was going to lead him astray, that he became a Nazarite. And so Rav Shimon HaTzadik says that's the kind of that kind of Nazarite, that kind of sin offering I'll participate in, because that was the journey that Nachmanides was talking about, Jeffrey, that you were talking about. That's a journey that's worthy of celebration. And even going back to Rabbi Adam, what you said, even when you stumble, you still celebrate. That sacrifice was when you stumbled in it, but you still celebrate it, because that's the journey that this person has to be on. We celebrate the journeys that are for the right reason and the right direction. We celebrate those.
You know, it kind of reminds me, I had a Rabbi, Shlomo Volba, who was a great Musanik. And when people sinned, he said many times they got very sad and depressed at their shortcomings. And he would say, well, who the hell are you to be so depressed? Were you such a tzaddik? Were you such a righteous person before? So again, when we fail, there are two opportunities. There's an opportunity to think in terms of the glass being half full and that we're less than we thought, or that failure is a mark that lets us know where we are and that we have more to go and to proceed. It's just a whole different way of looking at it. But I love that the Torah is ambivalent, and I'm loving that it gives us this kind of role model. Hesh, I want to take you back. We were living in New York City, and I got a call from you 30 years ago, and you said, could you stay the night because you were interviewing for a job? And I believe that was early on when you were interviewing for a job at some level in this space of rehab and what you said to me then was you love working, or that I think you said that Jewish kids and Jewish people in particular have one challenge in terms of admitting to have a problem specifically with alcohol and wine. Because everybody knows that Jews don't have a problem with alcohol or wine. Because we have Kiddush, because we have all these things. And the first step, maybe it's the 13th step, is to get over that rung. Is that still, is that a cultural phenomenon that is out there? It just kind of intrigued me.
First of all, that was probably 20 some years ago or more, and unfortunately, that myth has been busted. That being said, it's historically, in the research shows that any minority culture is particularly private about washing its laundry in public. It hides it very well because we as a minority culture, we can't afford to be more vulnerable than we already are. So that's one of the reasons Jewish communities throughout the 1800s, we don't hear about Jewish alcoholics. That they certainly were. There was the town shicker, the town drunk, but that was an individual. But to a certain degree, as we become more comfortable in the society, we feel less as minority cultures. We're willing and able to share some of our fragilities in public. So years ago, where you had a lot of Jews I ran into would not. I mean, they had that. The important part of the recovery was admitting that they were alcoholics, and yes, they were Jewish. I remember telling you a story about the one person I was working with at that time, a very bright young woman who, after she came to terms with being an alcoholic, she went through her parents' papers because she was sure she must be adopted because he couldn't really be Jewish because it was the concept was too foreign. That is no longer true. You have the retreats, recovery retreats that are populated by Jews of all stripes and colors and flavors. And whereas the organization that I used to be, that I am involved with, Jack, used to be the only show in town for a Jew in recovery, now, again, for better and for worse, there are a number of wonderful resources that people avail themselves, some specializing in drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, all the very, you name the addiction, and we are there. We are well represented. But there are, and thank God now there's more acceptance of addiction, and therefore more resources available for recovery.
I must say that I'm involved with Israeli charities, and there's a charity called the Israel Center for Addiction, because in Israel, addiction, and now we're talking across the board, is not recognized as a sickness. It's considered a moral shortcoming. Right. And so doctors literally have to lie in order to treat under the healthcare system and admit under the healthcare system. So at least in the Jewish state, there's still an issue with addiction.
Is that by any chance Returno? Is that another name for? I'm involved with something called Returno near Beit Shemesh.
No, this is a national organization, and it's really doing heavy-duty lobbying because it wants to change the government. Yeah.
The idea of the alcoholism as a moral failing is medically not true and is extremely dangerous. It's something we've come a long way, baby. If I can use that slogan, but we have ways to go.
Was Dr. Twersky involved in changing that approach?
In America, for sure. In the Jewish community, for sure. Which is why it became more kosher. See, I can't admit, if I'm a religious person, I can't admit that I have this moral, this moral chink in my armor. I can't admit that, but I can admit to having a medical issue. So the idea of Dr. Twersky making recovery kosher, part of making recovery kosher was having people deal with this as a medical the disease model. By the way, one just quick thing from Dr. Twersky, you mentioned in the bio that you were talking about his involvement in a Christian hospital, getting involved in 12-step recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous, which was perceived as a very Christian group. Dr. Twersky used to say that ideas come in three stages. Stage one, when we encounter a new idea, is that it's treif, it's not kosher, it's for the Christians, they're just trying to convert us, and we got to stay away from it. That's stage one. Stage two is that it's compatible with Judaism, we can also get recovery, it's something we're allowed to consider. Stage three is, it all came from Torah. We actually thought of it first. They took it from us, and it's 100% kosher. So he helped transition recovery. It's something to be more than just acceptable, but when people are able to use Judaism, use tradition, use Torah, like Jeffrey, like what you've done with this text, to see it as a vehicle for recovery.
That's amazing. I was doing my research and I came across a Haggadah that I don't know if you co-authored it or you edited it with Rabbi Twersky. And from some of the comments, I could see that the Haggadah took the leaving of Egypt, which is Mitzrayim, which is a narrow place, as liberation was recovery. Could you talk a little bit about that book?
Sure. Thank you. Twersky, myself, and one of his sons, who is a psychologist in New York, Ben-Zion Twersky, we all took different pieces, and we co-authored this Haggadah. He was the headliner for sure, as he took different parts, different essays in that Haggadah. And looking at Mitzrayim, looking at something, as you mentioned, is something like Mitzrayim comes to the word to be confined, something that holds us back. And to be able to leave that, to be able to reach our potential, we would look at the redemption, leaving Egypt, as the prototype of freeing oneself from bondage, from the bondage of addiction, of alcoholism, addiction, and to be able to experience a new life, a life that allows us other experiences. And I want to make sure to just to get in there. There's the idea. You'll hear alcoholics say, "I'm a grateful alcoholic," and I can say, "I'm a grateful post-Egyptian slave." Why a grateful alcoholic? Is because that experience allowed me to enter a world of recovery where Judaism and life has taken on meanings that I would never have dreamt of had I not had that experience. Had the Jewish people not experienced, how we, as individually, if we don't experience some type of confinement, then we have no appreciation of what freedom and what opportunity really means. A person can be a grateful alcoholic because of the alcoholism, they are now exposed to a world of recovery, a world of spirituality that they would never have known before. And I think that's true for Judaism. That's true for all people. Alcoholics have had the pleasure, if I can use that, of experiencing it in a very, very real way.
I'll just say, Hirsch, just as we're finishing up, it sounds to me, and I didn't realize this about Dr. Tversky, that what he did was, as much as anything else, he changed the language. The language of an alcoholic was not negative, but in a very Hasidic way, he made it positive. He gave it opportunity. He gave it celebration. And just in changing the language, he changed the approach.
Good point. Excellent.
Well, I think just talking about the seminal Exodus narrative, which is central to the narrative and the core of Judaism, on an individual level, just like the nation had to go through that liberation from that narrow place, almost as individuals, getting back to my comment about celebrating the ability to abstain and to get a handle on one's and the spiritual addition of being someone not in need. It just seems to me, again, it's a celebration. When we talk about the Exodus, we talk about being grateful and we talk about celebrating. So I guess as we finish, and we are really punctual here at Madlik, number one, I want to celebrate both you, Rabbi Adam, and you, Heshi, for joining me on this Erev Shabbat. I want to celebrate all of you, but I think we need to celebrate our struggles more. And we have to understand that the struggle is necessary to bring true redemption and true liberation. So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. Thank you, Heshi.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Enjoy your show.
Great Shabbat.
Thanks for joining, Hesh. Great seeing you.